Very good evening and welcome to this evening's Cabinet meeting on, I was almost going to say Tuesday, but Thursday the 11th of July. We are not expecting a fire alarm this evening, so should the alarm sound, please proceed down the stairs, out of the main entrance, if we were gathered upstairs, and gather in the car park next to the library. Can I please ask that all mobile phones and electronic devices are on silent? I'll pass across to the clerk who will explain how this meeting will run.
Thank you, Chair. Please note that we are using hybrid meeting arrangements with officers and councillors who are not members of the Cabinet having the option to join the meeting via Zoom, and are also live streaming this meeting via the Council's YouTube channel to encourage more people to engage in our public meetings. Please can I remind everyone to use their microphones when speaking and turn them off when finished. Please can attendees present in person refrain from watching the live stream or joining the Zoom link, as this will cause interference for our viewers. Anyone attending the meeting remotely must use the raise hand function when they wish to speak and to declare any interest at the appropriate time. If anyone attending the meeting remotely loses the connection, the meeting will continue and you will have the option to follow the meeting via the YouTube live stream. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. If we can start with item 1, apologies.
We have none, Chair.
Item 2, to confirm as a correct record the minutes of the Cabinet of the 11th of June. Happy to move from the chair. Do I have a seconder?
Happy to second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Disclosure of interests. If any member has any pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests, could they now declare that, please? None declared for this meeting. Thank you. Urgent items. We have no urgent items to deal with this evening. The order of business, I will be amending the order of business this evening. Items 12 and 15 will now follow item 7, but I will talk you through the item numbers as we get there. So let's start off with item number 6, which is the Local Government Association Corporate Peer Challenge. So I'm happy to bring forward the report on the Corporate Peer Challenge. I think it's probably worth just saying that from the LGA point of view, the LGA don't kind of automatically pick up any particular local authority and say, we're going to go and inspect and have a chat to that particular authority. The LGA come into local authorities because they are invited in by the leader of the council. I actually sit on the Improvement and Innovation Board at the LGA in London, and best practice is seen as having a peer challenge every 4 years. In other words, each administration having a peer challenge, so that there's an opportunity to improve, continuous improvement, and move forward. So our first peer challenge was back in 2015, when I think we were absolutely in a very different place and recognised in that 2015 place as being a bit of a basket case. I mean, the interesting thing and the most important thing is, in this particular report, it talks about the huge improvements that we have seen since 2015. So that is a huge positive. With all of these reports, we do want to move forward. We do want to continually improve, and there are a number of issues raised in the report. So alongside the report is the action plan, and I think it's really important that not only do we recognise the report in the first place, we also recognise the action plan, but not just recognise it, actually sign up fully and wholeheartedly to the action plan to be able for us all to move forward, to provide some of that continuous improvement that we have seen from 2015 through to 2019, and let's see that kind of improvement continuing from 2019 onwards. Sorry, where have I got 2019 from? Sorry, from 2023 onwards through to the coming years. So I'll hold fire there. I know, so the recommendation for reference is that the Local Government Association be thanked for undertaking the Corporate Peer Challenge and that the resulting feedback report be accepted. And 2, that the LGA Corporate Peer Challenge Action Plan, as set out in Appendix 2, be approved. I understand that Councillor Lewis is prepared to second this item.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman. And taking the report as a whole, I would have thought there's more good than bad in the report. And I think we must take on board the recommendations that they've given. But overall, it is a good report, I think, on the council, particularly the staff, the chief executive and others. Recommendation 2, which is the political one, I think we are taking that on board. As you know, Mr. Chairman, we had a meeting as soon as we could after the election to discuss going forward. And it is important that we go forward. And I said at that meeting, I will repeat, I think that we should draw a line under what's gone on before. It has been a very political year with changes of the numbers of councillors one way or the other, and of course the local by-election and the general election of last week. Seems a lot longer than a week ago, but it was only last week. And I think all members will take that on board. But overall, I'd like to second the recommendation and certainly take heed of the recommendations that the LGA have put forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So staying within the Cabinet for the moment, are there any comments, any views? Councillor Bai.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it is a very positive report in terms of the professional leadership of the Council, our firm finances and particularly progress with children's and adult services. So any resident who just read through the executive summary, I think would be reassured to know that in many ways that the Council absolutely has improved since 2015, when we had another review at a very difficult time. But I think we must all embrace the message, and although it isn't LGA language to say this, my reading through is it is for members and councillors that we mustn't cock it up, that they talk about a moment in time in terms of the substantial finance that has come our way from government to turn around the decline of the Bay, to tackle some of the deep-rooted, deep-seated issues. And absolutely, I think it's right that we now read the bits that undoubtedly are those that have excited reports in the media. The good bits people tend to take for granted. It's the bad bits that become the headlines. We must take on board the message that is there, that we all work together with our excellent professional team and somehow try and put the political differences behind us. So I'm looking forward to the implementation of the action plan, and I very much hope that colleagues will support the recommendations, but we must not lose this moment in time. That would be a tragedy for Torbay.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor. I'm going to move outside of the Cabinet table at this point. We've got people in the physical room. I've got people in the virtual room. And the first indication, excuse me, I have is from Councillor Swithin Long, who is joining us virtually this evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'd love to be with you, but I understand the latest COVID variant is called Flirt, and I wouldn't want to flirt with you guys this evening in case it's shared with everybody. Following the Council achieving the 2023 Local Government Chronicle Most Improved Council of the Year Award, it is really disappointing to read some of the comments in the report barely a year later. The report was delivered to the Council, if my memory serves me right, in about April time, and the situation has got worse since then, as anyone who has read the local media or watch some of the council meetings on YouTube will testify. The report correctly highlights that proposals to improve relations have not worked, and that continues tonight, sadly. We had agreed previously that there would be no surprises, and yet there's an item, as we discussed in the Snatchway earlier in the week, an item on Preston Down Road tonight, which didn't go through the normal channels which we would expect. However, saying that, the Liberal Democrat group absolutely agree that things need to change on behalf of our residents, and that's why myself and Councillor Cowell called for outside mediation or facilitation, which I understand is being picked up by the Chief Executive and progressed. Serving as a councillor should absolutely be about public service rather than about gain for a particular political party. So I'm glad to hear the agreement around the room tonight that we want to improve things and go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cowell.
Thank you, Chair. And I echo the comments of my colleague, Councillor Long, and also that of other members of the Cabinet. I think we all remember those particularly trying times that led to that 2015-16 LGA report. We have moved a significant way since those days, and as Councillor Long alluded to, culminating in the Most Improved Council Award, which members across the chambers, as well as all of our staff, should and did take a lot of pride in. It's right to say that things have been difficult in the last several months, but I think there is that absolute recognition, which I don't think really came through in the report, that many of us have always been determined to try and find positive ways forward in what is and can be a very political charged atmosphere. As has been alluded to, the general election is now out the way, the die is cast. We have 2 Liberal Democrat MPs that represent across the Torbay council area. We must make sure that we're working positively with those members to make sure our voice is heard clearly and positively in Westminster with a Labour government. So I think it really is thinking about what actually unites us rather than what may divide us. And I think the most significant thing around what does unite us is that determination to drive forward the economic regeneration, particularly around the current levels of funding that we've got for projects in our town centres, and indeed levelling up, or whatever it will now be called. So I think it is time for that reset. I was pleased of the positive reactions at our council leadership group meeting earlier this week, where we have agreed to establish a way forward, and that way forward has to include all 36 members, not just the leadership. I think it's imperative that the voice of all members is heard in this process so that we can have a really positive way forward, and I'm optimistic that we can achieve that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Cowell. I just, for everyone's benefit, I have already written to the 2 new MPs, inviting them into a half-day seminar visit on some of the issues, some of the locations, some of the bits and pieces that we are currently working on. Obviously, Steve will be up to speed with that as much as all of us anyway, but there's an opportunity there for Caroline to get up to speed. And I would also echo the comments from Councillor Cowell. I think that we need to demonstrate with the wider council that the relationship that we are trying to forge out between the group leaders is absolutely being tried to be brought forward. I think when we move on to, I think it's item 9, my apologies, the Preston Down Road, the recommendation that we have before us this evening is very different to the draft recommendation, and that is come about with us having a conversation and trying to a little bit more of the rationale about kind of where we got to. I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself, so I'll bring us back to the local government corporate peer challenge. We've got the recommendation on the table. I ought to say, because it was wrong of me not to mention that the action plan will be monitored by the audit committee. So my apologies for not mentioning that. So we want to make sure that it is absolutely audited. So recommendation is on the table. I will move to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. So let us move on to item 7, which is Nightingale Solar Farm.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Nightingale Solar Farm. And this is a good news story. It is something that has been on the cards for some time. It was brought forward by the previous administration, very much the Barton and Watcombe ward, where I understand a lot of consultation is taking place, and I think they've taken the local community with them. And it's also playing our part in reducing the carbon emissions for the Bay. Over a 25-year period, hopefully we'll be reducing our carbon emissions by over 18,000 tonnes. So we're playing our part, not only having a solar farm, but helping to save the world, as you say. The borrowing will be just over 4 million of prudential borrowing, as stated in the recommendation. But this is subject to a sound business case, and I think it is vital. We all want the solar farm there, but the figures have got to stack up. Not only stack up for the capital costs, but also for the revenue costs. And that's stated in the recommendation, that if we find that it doesn't stack up, then it will come back to the Cabinet for a further look at. As most of us know, and it's stated in the report, we're hoping that the end user will be Torbay Hospital, and heads of terms have now been signed. Clearly, heads of terms don't mean that it's a done deal, and it won't be a done deal until we have all the details of how much the cost per unit will be. But I do believe that this is a win-win situation. It helps Torbay to reduce their carbon emissions. It helps our friends and partners at the hospital, and it's a good use of a site that has been empty, an ex-tip site, which can now be put to full use, helping our partners, as I say, and helping reduce carbon emissions. So I'm very happy to put the proposals before the Cabinet, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. And our second of this evening, Councillor Tyerman.
Yes, very happy to second this, and I think it's just worth adding a little bit on the finances of this, particularly in regard to the final part of the presentation, or the final part of the recommendation, and that is that 10% of the surplus from the scheme will be used to support projects, community use projects within a mile distance of Nightingale Park, and I think that's something that is very much meeting the request of the community, but I do want to stress that the majority of the surplus from this scheme will occur not in the first 2 or 3 years that it happens, but quite a bit away into the future, and I think it's therefore important that the community understands that in looking at what's going to be there. I think overall, and I'm not going to go into figures that have been circulated, that they're there, but you can see the structure and the sort of surplus that might come out of this scheme. It is significantly less than that at Brokenbury, and that's understandable because the end user for this project is not literally alongside the site, and therefore the cost of the infrastructure to get the power from this solar farm to the user is significantly higher than it is for Brokenbury. I think we're in a position where I've seen a business case, a draft business case, that needs to be reworked and brought to us, as has been explained by Councillor Lewis, once final information is in there. And I think we're reasonably confident that it will stack up, but that is a confidence that needs to be proved out. And I would anticipate we'll be in a position to have that information in front of us within about 3 months. That would be the plan. Therefore, we are talking about something that can have a start in the not too distant future. And I think it's important that, whereas this has, I think, taken quite a long time to reach this stage, that we do try and move it at speed forward from now on.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments from around the Cabinet table? Just before I go outside of the Cabinet, I think it is right, Councillor, that you raised the managing expectations from the community of the 10% surplus. We saw something similar actually in Plymouth with the energy from waste plant that started off as quite a small amount of money. However, if you look at what's coming through in the community fund now, it's grown significantly from where it was, and I expect to see something similar with this particular site once the benefit of those early years are out of the way. So move across now to members outside of the Cabinet, and virtually Councillor Long.
Thank you very much. Sorry, my iPad was struggling to unmute, but thank you. As I'm one of the ward councillors, and we've been very supportive of this scheme from the very beginning. And as Councillor Lewis, I think it was, said, there has been extensive consultation, and in fact, the consultation on this scheme was, I believe, one of the council's best consultations. It was an exemplar consultation. And indeed, when there was an alternative scheme that was flirted with briefly, we actually had residents contacting us as ward councillors, very upset that this might not happen. So, such is the support for this scheme that there is in the ward. Can I just briefly, gently say that it would have been nice if the ward councillors had had a brief initial early sight of this report before it came to Cabinet, just as a heads up. Really, that would have been nice. On the issue of the community dividend, absolutely happy to be, the councillors are, for this ward, are absolutely happy to be part of that engagement with the community. For example, when the initial consultation happened, there is a local community group in the Willows which is very active, that we actually involved in the engagement, who actually went out themselves as well, so we could be part of that engagement. One question I do have is that when we do get to a time, even if it's 2 or 3 years hence, when there is a community dividend, it would be nice if the councillors could be involved in those discussions so that we could also get the feeling of the community as well. The final point is that item 2.3 of the report just highlights the lack of investment in the national grid that there has been over the last several years. And I know that this is an issue that has been nationally for a number of renewable projects, but absolutely supportive of this brilliant scheme. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My apologies, Councillor Cowell. I didn't see your hand hiding behind the pillar there.
No, I'm often behind a pillar. Like everyone in this room, I welcome that this scheme is almost about to come to fruition. It has been a long time in the making. I think we all know that the NHS are not always the fastest making decisions because of their structures. But at last that they have seized the metal and we have the heads of terms and an emerging business case. And I assume that Councillor Tyman and others will share the details of that business case once it's finalised so that we can cast our eyes over it. I think the other question about the 10%, which is something that we were really keen on seeing, that there is the community dividend, because it does reach into one of the most deprived areas in Torbay, at the top end of Barton there, and the opportunities for some of the community centres and facilities to benefit from that dividend. But I think it's important that we develop a process as to how that allocation will be decided upon, and as Councillor Long has alluded to, the community engagement in that determination. But the other thing we would need to see is a mechanism to be able to publish the profitability or otherwise of those surpluses on an annual basis, so that we know when we get to that tipping point and there is 10% going into a pot. So it'd be useful to know if there's been any consideration as to how that would be put into the public domain. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. The recommendations are 3.1 to 3.6, which are written in the report. However, just before we move to the vote, I'll move back to Councillor Lewis to pick up a couple of the points, and then over to Councillor Tyman.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I can assure Councillor Swithin-Long that we will try and engage, well, we will not try, we will engage with local councillors at every stage. It's also Councillor Cowell, the business case, we will share it and we will go forward. And the point about the local community 10%, certainly I think the local councillors are the best people to speak to on that subject. So I see this very much as going forward together and engaging with not only the local councils but also the local community. It's a good deal for all, and we want to share it widely. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Tyman.
Yes, I'd just like to respond to Councillor Cowell's requests, as it were. I'm perfectly happy to share the business case with him once we've got it in front of us. And I think the other thing I'd like to pick up on is on the calculation of the profit, how we calculate the 10%, because it's not a normal thing that the council does in evaluating profits out of individual projects. Our Chief Finance Officer alongside me and I will work on that, but in a sense we're sort of saying until we know it's actually happening, we don't want to put too much time and effort into working out how we're going to do that. But when this report comes back to Cabinet, when it's going ahead, that's there, we will have that information to include within that report.
Thank you very much indeed. So let's move to the vote, please. All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. And this is where we're going to just deviate from the order for a moment. We're going to move on to item 12. So item 12 is the disposal of the development site at Preston Down Road in Paignton. Councillor Tyman. If you could use your microphone as well, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. Right, yes, the Preston Down Road site has been earmarked for housing, received planning permission some time ago, and it's been the subject of Cabinet decisions under the previous administration. The proposals before us today are to create a variation on the decisions that were made back in the early part of last year. At that time, it was requested that a minimum of 50% affordable housing be included within this site, and that on that basis the Chief Executive was given authority to delegated authority to conclude a deal to pass on or to sell the site. What's emerged since then is difficulties in actioning that recommendation and significant decreases in the amount of income being offered to the council from the recommended purchaser. As a result, and the exempt part of this report shows some figures there that indicate that significantly less money would be received if we continued on a 50% affordable housing route, and therefore we believe that there is better value going to be obtained by the council overall by coming back down to 30%, getting a greater income and recycling the additional income into supporting affordable housing elsewhere within Torbay. The scheme would still be compliant with the normal rules of the council in terms of the quantity of affordable housing. So what we're talking about here is losing the additionality that was planned to be. Therefore, the recommendations that are coming before you today are that the Chief Executive be given delegated authority to determine an effective disposal strategy which enables the sale of Preston Down Road with an objective to secure a disposal which will result in delivery of 30% affordable housing and will maximise the sales receipt, and to do that in a timely manner. And that determining what that route is and what can be obtained, the Chief Executive be given delegated authority in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Place Development and Economic Growth to dispose of Preston Down Road. 3.13 of the recommendation is that the surplus received on the capital receipt from Preston Down Road be ring-fenced for the delivery of affordable, including social housing in Torbay, with a minimum of 50% of that surplus being ring-fenced for delivery of affordable, including social housing in Paignton. There is also an additional clause in here which says, and this is only to be applied if needed, that no later than 12 months prior to the expiration of the planning consent for the site, the director in place, pride in place, to bring forward a capital proposal to undertake the minimum works necessary to discharge relevant planning conditions, make a technical start on site, and make the planning consent extant in consultation with the Section 151 officer and Cabinet Member for Housing and Finance. So that's the proposal in front of us. The figures that are in the exempt report give you a very brief outline, and I think it's just worth explaining to members around the table that the original figure that we expect to receive for Preston Down Road was based upon a number of factors that have changed in the meantime. And therefore, I think the advice being given to us, to me at the moment in Cabinet, is that the lower offers that appear to be on the table at the moment are probably not unreasonable in reflecting that change of circumstances. But we're not here setting any minimum. We're asking the Chief Executive to go out and get the best deal we can for Preston Down Road. And the higher that sale price is, the more money, as it's set up, we will have available to recycle into affordable housing elsewhere within Paignton and the rest of Torbay. So we will be doing everything possible, I trust, to maximise the amount of money that we can receive for the site.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Billings.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm delighted to second this proposal. If I talk about personally my commitment and demonstrate that through what I've done through the previous neighbourhood plan process to showcase the importance of affordable housing. As Vice Chair of the Neighbourhood Plan in Brixham, we put through a local occupancy criteria condition for affordable housing, which was innovative in Torbay at the time in terms of ensuring that local people with a demonstrated need got affordable housing. We also put through a variety of schemes previously in the neighbourhood plan to deliver affordable housing. So personally, it's something I think is really important. And it's because of that background that I'm very pleased to support this. When looking at the recommendation before us, the thing I have in the front of my mind is this proposal the mechanism to deliver the most amount of affordable housing in Torbay in the sites best suited for the users of that housing? And in my mind, it is. What we've got here is a proposal to offer developers a site in the way they are used to developing sites in the locality by requesting 30% of affordable housing and offering them a site in the way they are used to bringing forward sites is, in my view, the best mechanism to get best value for the council when we dispose of that land. But we've got a proposal also, and baked into the recommendation, that the entirety of that capital receipt be ring-fenced for the delivery of affordable housing in Torbay, with a minimum of 50% being ring-fenced for the delivery of affordable housing in Paignton. Now, in my eyes, that will deliver more affordable homes than us as a council trying to encourage the development community to deliver more housing on Preston Down Road in isolation. I say that because this recommendation gives the opportunity to bring forward affordable housing on sites where the land values will be such that we can deliver more units, and also, notwithstanding the quantity of affordable homes, we'll be able to locate those in areas closer to the town centre, which might be better suited for those that want to use active means of travel to commute into work in our areas where there are greater work opportunities, rather than on a peripheral out-of-town site. So, although it is a variation to the original proposal that went through Cabinet previously, in my eyes, I'm convinced this is a way to ensure we get net delivery of more affordable homes, including social housing, and also get those on the sites best suited to ensure that housing is best located for the likely users. So I'm delighted to second this. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Any comments from within the Cabinet? So let's move outside of the Cabinet to Councillor Long.
Thank you very much. And I would like to start off by acknowledging that the administration has brought forward an improved recommendation as outlined in, I think, 3.1.3 for the delivery of affordable and social housing in Torbay and Paignton in particular. This followed, I think, what can be described as a frank exchange of views on earlier in the week amongst group leaders. However, I do have some concerns remaining. I remember when the administration closed the housing company Torvista, the report stated that the council would need to work out how it could influence the housing market more to bring forward more affordable homes. I haven't seen any outcome of that yet, and I fear that this proposal sends completely the wrong message that this council does not want to focus on affordable housing as much as it did. And it sends the wrong message to Homes England that we might be rolling back on affordable housing, particularly on a site that the council owns. And why should developers build maximise the amount of affordable housing on their sites if the council isn't absolutely maximising the amount of affordable housing in its own site. And frankly, we will never solve the housing crisis by only sticking to 30% in our planning applications. However, my main concern is the admission by the Preston councillors in our meeting earlier in the week that there was also a political element to this, that they did not want more than 30% affordable housing in Preston. And that's really concerning, because where are the children of people in Preston going to be able to live if they happen to be in a low income family? Where are the carers of those who might need care later in life supposed to live if they've got family in Preston, and other key workers? I think this just sends out the completely wrong message, and it sends out a lack of hope to people. Thank you.
You've certainly managed to raise a few hands, Councillor Long. Councillor Cowell.
Thank you, Chair. I must admit, when I saw the first report when it was first published, because as Councillor Long alluded to earlier in the meeting, this report seemed to have bypassed that council leadership group process. So the first sight that we had of it was after the publication of the report, and it horrified me at the tone of it and the emphasis of it, and particularly in terms of sending out signals to registered provider partners as well as Homes England, and the fact that it even referred to the capital receipt being deployed on some of the public realm projects that are more than needed, more than welcomed, but don't address the issue of Torbay's housing crisis. So following those conversations that we had earlier in the week, I welcome the recentering of the emphasis, and I'd just like to correct, I think it must have been a slip of the tongue when Councillor Billings said the entirety of the capital receipt. It will only be the net value of the capital receipt that will be made available. But the fact that that sum, and it could be a reasonably significant sum, being ring-fenced for the delivery of affordable and social housing is to be welcome. And I'd like to dispel this myth that people who live in affordable and social housing don't have cars and don't drive. Yes, that particular site is on the edge of town, but equally you could argue Watcombe, which was one of the biggest council estates in Torquay, and has a huge legacy of social housing within the housing mix there, isn't exactly close to reliable bus routes or other means of easy travel. So let's just dispel that myth. So I also welcome it. I would hope that the final analysis, once it's been arrived at through the Chief Executive and in consultation with others, that final analysis will also be shared with other group leaders in the spirit of the new ways of working that we're seeking. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I struggled a little bit to hear Councillor Long, but in response to the points that he made, I would say that this recommendation, and I'm delighted to support it, sends out the message, and I hope that message is heard up the line in Westminster, that this council wants to get building. We're not going to solve the social and economic problems of Torbay without increasing our recent pitiful delivery of housing of all kinds. This proposal gets a site underway in the context that only a week or two ago we had the confirmation that another site over in Brixham, St Kilda's, that passed very much under the radar because during the run-up to election we can't shout about things. We're getting that underway, and working with our development partners, we're getting other sites underway, and some of those sites will include affordable social housing. So I think the compromise that we've come to, and it is a balance, it's a balance to get housing And I think any council that doesn't support housing and gets housing projects literally off the ground is not going to gain favour with our new government. It's to get houses built. It is to try and maximise the amount of social and affordable housing. And in this case, it's to try and get a reasonable receipt for what is basically the family silver. It is a very, very valuable site. And without going into what's in part 2, I think we do have an obligation to get a reasonable amount of money. So it's balancing those three things. What brings it all together is 3.13, that the surplus received on the capital receipt from Preston Down Road be ring-fenced for the delivery of affordable, including social housing in Torbay, with a minimum of 50% being ring-fenced for delivery of affordable, including social housing in Paignton. From my memory, the planning consent is for about 100 dwellings up there. So when we're talking about 30%, that is 30 dwellings, 30 affordable homes. That's 30 more than are there now, and we might be waiting forever for the perfect scheme and deliver nothing. So let's get the money, get this building, and there'll be 30 units at least of affordable homes up in Preston. I think this is a good compromise. I hope colleagues will support it, and let's get building and send out the message that Torbay is building homes for residents.
Thank you. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Councillor Long said that it gives out the wrong message to Homes England. I think it gives a great message, as Councillor Bye and Councillor Billings said, that with the scheme going forward, we'll probably have double the number of affordable homes. We'll have the 30% on Preston Down Road, and with the receipts from Preston Down Road, which is a lot more money because of where it is sited, we should be able to build perhaps double the number of houses in Paignton town centre. And you talk about Preston Down Road being under the ownership of Torbay Council. As you well know, there are a number of sites in Paignton town centre, also owned by Torbay Council, that we're trying to get across the line. A lot of ones that you tried to get across the line, and for reasons out of our control, prices going up and everything, we were unable to do it. With the receipt from Preston Down Road, hopefully we'll have delivery of 100 houses, 30% affordable, on Preston Down Road, and we'll get some of the schemes in Paignton Town Centre across the line. It's all very well going for 50% affordable housing on Preston Down Road, but if you can't deliver it and you can't get a developer to develop out at 50%, 50% of nothing is nothing. Therefore, I think this is a really good scheme, one that we should go ahead and hopefully we'll get the cranes, the developers, as Councillor Carroll many years ago said, if we have 20 cranes in Torbay, then we know we've cracked it. So let's get the cranes going and the buildings up and running. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I think most of the points that I was going to raise have been covered by Councillor Bye, Councillor Lewis. So in the absence of any other hands, I will move to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, we move on to item 8 now, which is the Torbay Resident Discount Scheme launch approval. And we move across to Councillor Billings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm delighted to present this item. We promised in May 2023 in our manifesto that we would put residents first, and as part of that, we would introduce a residents' discount scheme for parking, toilets and leisure. And that is exactly what we have in item 8 now before us, and is great to be able to deliver on our manifesto commitments. The report sets out how our new residents' discounts card will deliver discounted parking with an hour free when buying at least an hour. And based on there being 10 uses over the course of the year, that will give residents a discount value of about £15 a year. It will deliver discounted public toilet uses, with the card entitling the holder to 33 visits, representing £10. And it will entitle the holder to discounted leisure and retail opportunities, and it is anticipated that over the course of 10 uses, the card will have a value of £20 to £50. Putting all that together, we believe that the card will have a net value in terms of saving to our residents of between £45 and £75 a year. So against that, there will be a modest charge for the card of £10 when you originally take out the card, or £5 charge if you lose your card and need a replacement. But we feel this modest outlay fairly represents the cost of processing that the council will be going through, and also ensures that those that choose not to participate in the scheme will not unfairly subsidise those that do. To promote take-up of the card, we will have multiple sign-up opportunities. There will be a sign-up opportunity following launch in September 24, for sign-up in October 2024, November 2024, for cards sending out in December, and there'll be a subsequent period of sign-up in January and February 2025, with cards going out the 1st of April. That will mean that for the first year, cards will run for up to 15 months, and thereafter they'll run for 12. The card is a fantastic opportunity to promote local businesses, and so we'll be relying on local traders to promote sign-up, and we hope to be able to tell us much more about that in due course. So to summarise the key points of the report, I propose we proceed with the introduction of the card in line with the recommendation, and in particular, if I go through it, at item 3.1, that the delivery of the Torbay Residents Discount Scheme, as outlined in the submitted report, be approved for launch in September 2024. At 3.2, that the Director of Pride in Place seeks to keep the operational budget of the scheme within the £200,000 allocated within the Council's 2024-2025 budget, and within any budget set for the scheme in future years. At 3.3, that the Director of Pride in Place, in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Pride in Place and Parking and the Director of Finance, be given delegated authority to approve future changes to the scheme. At 3.4, that the Director of Pride in Place, in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Pride in Place and Parking and the Director of Finance, be given delegated authority to offer residents on low incomes a reduction in the entry costs of the scheme in the event the Director is not satisfied that the scheme will achieve a neutral or positive impact on financial equality for those on low incomes solely through the provision of leisure and retail offers intended to target these groups. And at 3.5, that the Director of Pride in Place be given delegated authority to award the contracts in respect of the services of external suppliers for the printing and posting of promotional materials and residents' discounts, cards and permits for use in the scheme. That, in summary, is what we've got in the report, Mr. Chairman, and I put it for proposal.
Thank you very much indeed. Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Thomas, Mrs. Shea.
Thank you, Chairman. I am happy to second this proposal, as I feel this scheme demonstrates that we are putting our residents at the heart of everything we do. It gives our residents in Torbay an opportunity to provide our families and individuals the benefit of a residents' discount scheme. It also encourages residents to support local businesses and get involved with the leisure activities and enjoy our local cultural venues. This also encourages residents back into our town centres with discount car parking and includes use of the many toilet facilities we have around the bay. This is a great opportunity for our residents, so I am more than happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you. Stay within the Cabinet for any further comments. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Billings, for doing the report very clearly and distinctly. And I think there's been a lot on social media about when are we coming up with our residence scheme that we promoted at the election. And I'd like to thank Lisa Tuck and her team for all the hard work that they've done. It's not an easy job to do it from scratch, and it will take time. You know, there will be things that may be a hiccup. It may go very smoothly. But what we have done, which is what we've done on other items like regeneration, is deliver. And this is what we are going to do. And I hope that the good residents of Torbay will take up the offer of the cards, the scheme. And to do that, we also need the good businesses of Torbay to sign up, because it's going to be good for them. It's going to be good for the residents and good for the businesses of Torbay. So the more cross-party, I hope that we're all being in agreement cross-party on this one, all promoting it to not only the residents but also the businesses and the attractions. It's a really good opportunity for people to get engaged and feel part of Torbay Council Residents Discount Card. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Tyerman.
Thank you. I think I'd like just to comment that I think that it's been quite a difficult route to come up with a scheme, particularly in regards of trying to judge what the take-up will be, and therefore, in a sense, what the cost will be. And I think we've gone through 2 or 3 cycles, as it were, to try and get to this point. And it does feel we've got to a point now where we have a scheme that will be attractive to enough people to give it momentum. I think it's, although you want to make a scheme that is attractive, I think you also want to produce something where it's quite clear that we're not pushing people to join this scheme if we don't think it's going to be of benefit to that individual. It's a personal choice. If people don't think they can get the value as an individual or a household, then actually we shouldn't be encouraging them to join the scheme. However, I believe that a significant proportion of the population in Torbay would benefit, would gain value from this, and therefore I think we've got that blend right now. But I think with any scheme like this, it will need fine-tuning. I cannot believe that in 2 or 3 years' time, every element of it will be as it is year one. We will learn how to make it better as time goes on. And I think it's important that we go into it and we, with that attitude, that it's a live, moving thing for Torbay, so that we can actually build on what we managed to achieve in year one, in year two, and build on it again, hopefully, year by year into the future. And I think it's got the ability to support town centres, support local businesses, bring more people in to not have to rush back to their cars. If they've got a 3 hours parking within that, hopefully they will stay in the town centre longer. And I think that will be, a benefit. The benefits will be small, but small benefits created multiple times and with multiple people can add up to some real extra momentum for our retail business in Torbay. So I think it's the right thing to do, the right thing to put forward, the right thing to encourage people to join if it's going to be a benefit to them. And I hope that we can get the momentum from the residents and the businesses in Torbay to make this happen. I don't think it's something that really is a council-driven project. It should become, over the first 2 or 3 years, much more a community-driven project Clearly, we're here to start it off, but I believe it could create a momentum of its own. So it will have my support.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is great news for the residents of Torbay, and just a little disappointing that it wasn't in place a few weeks ago, because had it been, my newly elected colleague in the now highly marginal ward of Wellswood may have been voted in by 10 votes rather than 9, and perhaps that would have not necessitated the second recount, which would have been a blessing for us all, because there was one dear lady who I have to say is not one of us, if you know what I mean, Chairman, who was going to vote, or said she was going to vote for this from our manifesto last May, but of course it wasn't implemented until the by-election, or before the by-election. So a shame it wasn't in place, otherwise there would have been more to have excited the residents. I think this is great news. I think it will build. Absolutely, it's what people want to see. They want to be able to park for longer without paying more money, and absolutely a little card for those public conveniences. As you know, I don't always read the full detail of all the reports, but I thought I would break the habit of a lifetime and rather annoyingly point out that I think there is still a mistake there on page 106, 107, when it's explained that there's an early bird sign-up offer, so people can start applying for this card in September, and then it'll be posted out in December, allowing residents to have a 15-month period until April 2026. So that's the first sort of go at it. You'll get more for your money. Then at the top of page 107, it says the scheme will be open again for sign-ups in January and February 2005, with cards posted to residents in June. It's used from the 1st of April 2025. Have I got that right? Have I got that wrong? Or should it say 2026?
I regret to inform you that the report is correct.
Oh my goodness.
The report is correct. And for clarification, what it's saying is there are multiple opportunities to sign up. So you'll be able to sign up at Christmas, and from September, and the card being issued on the 1st of January. There'll be a second opportunity to sign up for that year, and you can sign up from the 1st of April. Of course, the early bird offer means that instead of getting 12 months, you actually get 15, 16 months.
Well, I apologise, and I apologise to hard-working officers. I've been saving up that all afternoon. I didn't share it with anybody because I thought I could show my intelligence, but I will now leave while I'm behind, and I nonetheless still hope everyone supports this.
And maybe that's a good reason why you don't always read the reports. Have a sweet. Thank you, Councillor. Okay, I'm going to move outside of the Cabinet table. I've got Councillor Long, I've got Councillor Cowell, and then I've got Councillor Brooks. So we're going that order, please. Councillor Long.
Thank you very much. And it was trumpeted earlier by the proposer as a keeping of a manifesto promise. And I wonder if it will be greeted with the same acclaim as the manifesto promised to keep council tax down, which wasn't quite what it seemed. This is actually a subscription scheme rather than a discount scheme, so something that people will have to pay for in advance. And on the parking, there is no actual discount on the parking because you actually have to pay the full price of parking before you actually get the extra hour. I'd just be interested on the staff who will be operating the scheme and what departments they will be from and whether they're being seconded or is this being added on to their existing workload, and are the project team similarly having this work added on to their workload as well. There's also no details of any businesses, I don't think, in the report who are offering, so just be interested to know how many businesses or attractions that have signed up. But my main point, if I may, for this evening is I found the equality impacts very interesting, as I often do, and it mentioned that charging residents will impact residents on low incomes. So I do wonder why there is no preferential scheme for the residents' discount card as there is for the garden waste, i.e. a discount for those on council tax support. I wonder why that was not included. And I think Councillor Bye will correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that there's money siphoned from children's services for this scheme, but there isn't actually any particular benefit for people who are care leavers, who have been in the care process, who it might not be designed for them according to the equality impact. So I'm just surprised that Councillor Bye didn't insist on that, given that there was money diverted from his department. And finally, I understand that with the discount card, that the 33rd use of the discount card for the toilets, the 33rd use is more expensive than all the others. So I just appreciate guidance on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cowell.
Thank you, Chair. And, well, I think I'm going to leave it to the residents of Torbay to determine how excited they are about this scheme that is going to be of such a huge benefit to them. I can understand why it's taken so long, because it's not an easy thing to implement. It's an easy thing to write, as they pledge in the manifesto, less easy to actually deliver something that's meaningful. I recall when we were trying to issue free toilet passes to beach hut users, the challenges that presented, not least to officers to administer the scheme. I would be interested to hear from the Cabinet member what success will look like. There's reference to pressures on the budget if there's in excess of 20,000 to sign up. But what is the anticipated level of success in year one? Is it 2,000, 10,000, 15,000, 200? There's no sort of indication of the likely take-up. Equally, what the success will be in terms of business, retail, hospitality and other attractions, for example, what success would look like in terms of those that take up the opportunity. In terms of the extra hour for car parking, what is the likely impact upon revenue from car parking, or will that space simply be occupied, whereas otherwise it may not have been anyway, bearing in mind that the occupancy rates of our car parks are nowhere near full capacity. And like Councillor Long, I'm disappointed that it's all a little bit wishy-washy in terms of what a scheme would look like to support those on low incomes. We were very mindful of it when we introduced the green waste collection scheme, which has been quite successful. I can tell that when I'm walking around my ward of Shippey, the number of bins that are out on a Tuesday for green waste collection. And I think there's opportunities to boost that even further. But why we didn't have reference to council tax support scheme as one of the criteria that people could apply for a discounted card, I'm unclear on. But as I say, I think the success or otherwise of the scheme will be the proof of the pudding will be in the eating and how many residents take up this exciting opportunity. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Brooks.
Brooke. Thank you, Chair.
My apologies.
I'm going to be a bit more positive than my colleagues who've just talked before. You know, using the WWW here, it's win-win-win. Win for residents, it's win for business, and it's win for the council. For residents, a common conversation I've had with my dear mother with her friends is about the fact of when they go into towns and they've got to keep paying for a P and they don't want to pay for a P, and it stops them going down to the town centres and down the seafronts, and this scheme will facilitate them going for free. So it's fantastic on that front. For businesses, I mean, we're desperate to get footfall down into our town centres. And the idea that you could go now down for 2 hours and effectively get your second hour free, which then is effectively a 50% discount, is marvellous news. It'd be marvellous news for businesses. They will then try and attract the residents to come down. They're up their game, which they want to do. And then that's a win for residents and that's a win for business. And frankly, also a win for council. You know, the council gets a bad rap with residents from time to time in the media, in the social media, and to see something's delivered for them, benefit for the residents, all positive, is fantastic news. So we will see what the proof is in the pudding, in the uptake, but let's be more excited about this. I mean, I'm going to sign up straight away. My family will. It's great value, and I look forward to the businesses who are going to support it as well. So marvellous. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. So I'm going to come back to Cabinet. Councillor Bye, and then go to Councillor Billings.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I'm not aware of any funds from Children's Services that have gone into this scheme. I don't understand where that suggestion has come from. When we look at the accounts, or we look at the revenue budget, the outturn for last year, you look, sadly it is generally the case that the money from the council goes into Children's Services to offset overspends in Children's Services. So if any money has moved from one side to the other, it's into Children's Services, not from Children's Services. As you know, we are signed up to the UNICEF programme to make Torbay a child-friendly place, and absolutely want to engage with children and young people and get an impression from them what they would like to see. So I see this as a start. It's an offer on parking and toilets and hopefully getting businesses on board. But absolutely, I'd like to see something that we can offer our children and young people that may be equivalent, but it's different. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move across to Councillor Billings to deal with some of the questions, and then we'll move to the vote.
Thank you. Just wanted to address, Chairman, some of the questions that were raised. They touched on some very important points that have already been the subject of lots of consideration. So, first of all, if I can talk about the rationale for the approach taken on equalities, and in particular the rationale for the inclusion of paragraph 3.4 of the recommendation, where we're placing reliance on the Director of Pride in place to ensure that the scheme will achieve a neutral positive impact on financial inequality, or if not, provide a reduction on the entry costs of the scheme. The reason for that approach is if we applied the same discount that's in place for garden waste collections that was referred to, which is 20%, we would have a discount of £2. Now, in reality, is that going to be that useful? Probably, in fairness, if you were going to have a substantive contribution, you'd probably want to halve the price and make it a discount of £5, or you might well want to make these cards free if you're actually really going to seek to approach these issue of equality by simply looking at the face value of the card. The alternative approach is to look at the use of the card and to spend the same resources trying to make the leisure and the retail offers primarily favour those on lower incomes. We've heard in other meetings how there's inequality in terms of access to food, because often people on lower incomes will not have the access to travel, so they won't be able to go to supermarkets further away. They'll need to use suppliers close to their locations. I would much rather we first of all started trying to focus on the offers that address equalities that way, rather than simply focusing on the face value of the card, because at the end this is a discretionary scheme that we're trying to benefit residents, all residents, through its existence. And to me, that, and we're not, might work, might not work, That's the purpose for the insurance provided by paragraph 3.4. But let's see, if that approach doesn't work to the satisfaction of the director, then Councillor Long, that's why we've got that face value discount. But let's see whether that approach works first. Taking the other point, we were asked about what success looks at in terms of the numbers signing up. That's a very difficult question. I believe that when the previous administration brought in green bins, and what a fantastic scheme that's been, it was very difficult to pin down and actually assess what the level of take-up was, and it's taken a while to get take-up to where it was expected to be. Clearly, ultimately, the take-up of this scheme will be the quality of not just the parking and the toilet offer, but it will be the leisure and the retail offer. And it really will depend on how much this card is embraced by our local traders in terms of wanting to promote it and recognise the benefit both for those traders as well as the wider community. And I think let's judge. I'm sure we'll all see success when we see it, and I'm confident that the way the community and residents and businesses have approached on a collaborative way this year's air show, I'm confident that they'll do so with this residents' discounts card, and I'm sure we'll see success. We'll know success when we see it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Any final comments? Okay, we'll move to the vote then. All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. We now move to item 15.15, which is the re-procurement of asset maintenance, the service level agreements 2024. So item 15, Councillor Lewis.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman. The reasons for this proposal and its benefits. The re-procurement of these SLAs will support our asset maintenance and our role as an efficient and enabling council. It will also help the council to keep a grip on finance and contribute towards the council's commitment to addressing the climate change emergency. The proposals in this report help us to deliver these ambitions by ensuring that the assets which Torbay Council own are maintained by suitable, reliable, authorised contractors to a reasonable standard, and the council manages its assets safely and in accordance with its statutory and regulatory obligations. It also supports the council's ambition to reduce carbon emissions and meet its carbon reduction targets. The reasons for this re-procurement proposal is because the existing service level agreements that provide these wide-ranging services expires on the 31st of March 2025. These SLAs play an essential role in ensuring that the council fulfils its property-related statutory duties and maintains its assets to a reasonable industry standard. So the recommendation, Mr. Chairman, is that the Director of Pride in Place, in consultation with the Director of Finance, being given delegated authority to grant service level agreement contracts to the successful bidders on the service level agreements framework procurement. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor. I'm happy to second this. You can see that this is a number of services that clearly the council uses, additional to what was there before, including PAT testing and gutter clearance services, solar panel maintenance. I don't expect a huge discussion on this particular item, but you never know. So happy to second it from the chair. Any further comments from inside the cabinet? Any comments from outside of the cabinet? In which case, we shall move straight to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, can I give my apologies for the rest?
Thank you very much indeed. At this point, we do say goodbye to Councillor Lewis. Some would be cheering that, some would be... no, absolutely not. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move back now to item number 9. And just make sure that, Torbay Youth Justice Plan 24-25, item 9. Councillor Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and hopefully I've got a better grasp of this. The recommendation is to approve the Youth Justice Service Plan, noting that it has been approved by the Torbay Youth Justice Service Strategic Board, signed by the Chair of the Board and already submitted to the National Youth Justice Board. That is because it had to get to the National Youth Justice Board by the end of June. But nonetheless, it is important that members of the Cabinet and other colleagues have the opportunity to see this report and plan for 2024-2025 of the Youth Justice Service. I attend those meetings, which are generally every other month. I'd like to highlight 2 or 3 things in the report and in the plan. Firstly, that the Youth Justice Service works with some of the most vulnerable and deprived children and families within Torbay, as is evidenced within Chapter 15, overrepresented groups section of the plan, which shows that 63% of children known to the service are living in poverty in receipt of free school meals. 31% live in areas that fall into the 10% most deprived in England, and 31.6% have special educational needs and in education and a health care plan, and over 3/4 are already known to children's services. So we are working with some of the most vulnerable young people and providing support for them to turn their lives around. There are challenges, absolutely there are challenges, but there are achievements. For example, and the chairman of the board in the opening comments that she has written on page 131, we are doing particularly well now in maintaining very low rates of children who re-offend. And that is particularly true for the new prevention turnaround service, where early data shows 81% of children accepted in the programme did not go on to re-offend. So we're doing very well on re-offending. As was raised by Councillor Cowell at the Overview and Scrutiny meeting last night on the Council's general performance, there has been an issue in terms of new entrants into the Youth Justice Service. This report actually explains it rather better than I was able to explain last night. So if colleagues would like to look at page 141, the numbers that we're dealing with are actually always very, very small. Sometimes each month there's 2 or 3 new entrants into the system. Sometimes there are none. The figures that were shown last night goes through a kind of formula and is an annual rolling figure, which did sound quite alarming. But that block chart, the blue on page 141, shows that a blip that occurred towards the end of last summer and into the early part of the winter has, thankfully, with intervention work with colleagues, has turned a corner, and we've actually achieved much lower figures in recent months and have had a couple of months with no new entrants into the Youth Justice Service. The particular blip has been sadly in one particular area of Paignton, and it has been most unusually with younger females rather than males. So it seems to be something that's just gone on in a particular area that hopefully we are through the worst. Challenges include finding appropriate accommodation. At the last meeting of the Youth Justice Service Strategic Board, we took on responsibilities, those of us on the board, for individual areas to become champions at the suggestion of one of the partners, and I have taken on the task to try and bring to fruition this long quest to find premises for face-to-face services, and working with colleagues, including Alan Denby, we very much hope to resolve this now. It's something that's been going on far too long. We must find premises, otherwise we're going to be in a weak position when the service is judged, which is likely to be again later this year. So happy anyone wants to raise their issues or questions, of course, but I very much hope this has already been approved by the board. It's already gone up the line. I very much hope that colleagues this evening will support the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. And I'm happy to second this one from the Chair. I 100% appreciate that this has already gone through the strategic board and moved up the line, but there's a great opportunity for us to talk about the work that's going on here. And looking through and reading through the report, particularly on page 151 and 152, I know a subject that very close to your heart, Councillor, is the child first approach and indeed the voice of the child, and we also spoke about that overview and scrutiny last night. There's a lot more detail in the report, but particularly over those 2 pages. So I will leave it there just as a snapshot, and we'll open it up to any debate from within the Cabinet. Any comments from outside of the Cabinet? In which case, I'll move to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. We continue with the numbering as it is now. Item number 10, the Gambling Act, the Draft Licensing Statement of Principles 2025 to 2028. Councillor Tranter.
Thank you, Chair. Under the Gambling Act 2005, it is the responsibility of the Council to develop and publish a statement of principles and review this at least every 3 years. The current statement was published on the 31st of January 22, and therefore it must be reviewed, consulted upon and republished by the 30th of January 25. The published policy then provides the framework for all decisions on applications relating to the Gambling Act 2005 and the way the Council carries out its functions in relation to the legislation. There will be changes in the near future to the Gambling Act following the publication of the Government's Gambling White Paper, High Stakes Gambling Reform for the Digital Age, in April 2023. However, the review cannot wait until the legislation has been updated. We have therefore reviewed the Statement of Principles based on the current legislation and Gambling Commission Code of Practice and have only made minor changes. The information regarding small casinos has also been removed following the relocation of the unused small casino licence by the Department of Culture, Media and Sport in September 23. Members therefore need to consider the report and approve the draft gambling statement of principles 2025 to 2028 for public consultation for a period of 6 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I understand that Councillor Billings will second this item.
Yes, Chairman, I'm delighted to second this. It seems a prudent approach to the topic and one that I think we should all applaud. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments around the Cabinet table? Any comments outside of the Cabinet? In which case we'll come back. I don't think there's anything further to add at this stage, so we'll move straight to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Stay with Councillor Tranter as we move on to item 11, which is the draft homelessness and rough sleeping strategy.
Thank you. This paper seeks to go out to public consultation on the homelessness and rough sleeping strategy. It is a statutory requirement to undertake a review and produce a strategy every 5 years. The strategy has been produced with partners and service users' input. There is clear governance guidance on what the strategy should cover, and further feedback will be obtained through the consultation period, which will commence this week, subject to the approval at this meeting. What's included in the strategy are 3 main priorities. The first priority is increasing early help and prevention. This will ensure that people get the right advice at the right time. We also need to target our prevention activity to reduce repeated homelessness, rough sleeping and youth homelessness. Our highest level of homelessness is from those losing accommodation in the private rented sector, which therefore needs to be an area of focus. Second priority is intervention. This means that we need to have the ability to act swiftly to give targeted support to those in crisis and get them into accommodation or off the streets. This means providing temporary accommodation, but also helping people to have the skills and means to maintain their tenancies. Priority number 3 is achieving better outcomes and better lives. A property is not the end but the start of somebody's journey. It's how we collectively, by linking in with other areas of work and strategies to ensure that there are employment opportunities, training and support to build people's resilience and help themselves. How the consultation will look like is there will be a communication and engagement plan that has already been produced, and this includes the use of an online portal as well as specific activities which include email distribution to interested parties, including statutory agencies, interested groups, the voluntary sector, landlord associations, faith groups and colleges, etc. This will also be accompanied with individual calls to groups to promote engagement. Posters with QR codes will be distributed and paper copies available at libraries. Articles will be published in various publications, including the Beach Hut, Torbay newsletters and social media platforms. We are also hoping to post adverts on the Devon Home Choice, providing a link to the consultation portal. Information will be provided in communications to those currently accessing Torbay Council homeless services. Existing service user networks will also be utilised. I also wanted to state that there's been a lot of negativity on social media about some of the council's consultations, thinking that what they're saying is the draft homelessness and rough sleeping strategy has already been written and is in concrete. That is absolutely not true, and we rely heavily upon public consultation, groups, volunteers, everybody getting involved with consultations and as much feedback as possible, and this helps design our strategies. Following the consultation, the strategy will be revised and an action plan will be developed using information that we've received from public consultations. The strategy will then be presented in various meetings, culminating in a council meeting in December. Work will continue in the interim in progressing the delivery of different areas of work. The strategy also proposes the establishment of Torbay Homelessness Partnership, who will own and deliver the action plan. So I hope to get your support in sending this draft strategy out to public consultation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tyerman to second this one.
I'm very happy to second this, and without wanting to go over a lot of what's been said, a considerable amount of work has been put into developing the draft strategy that we have, but it's very much a step along the road, on the route to getting to where we want to be in terms of a strategy. But I wouldn't also like to say, I wouldn't also like to miss out on the fact of saying that even though we're revising this strategy, a lot of work is continuing to go on by our officers in dealing with homelessness and rough sleeping in the best way that they can at the moment. And I think we should give credit to, I think, quite a successful amount of work that's gone on in particularly in terms of preventing homelessness happening. I think there's certainly a lot more that we need to do going forward, and this strategy will help to develop in how we deal with homelessness once it's occurred. And we certainly be very keen to get more feedback, more ideas from the community through this consultation to help us develop the strategy of how we achieve that.
Thank you, Councillor Tyman, and I think a big part of that actually is everything that we can do on the prevention side to stop people, falling through the net. Because, we've done a lot of work in prevention. It's important that we continue to that because of the impact it has on families. Councillor Bai, I think you indicated that you wish to speak.
Thank you. And again, would like to say thank you to those who are working on this. It's a draft strategy to go out to consultation. But if you look on page 255 on the reports pack, section 1, key facts. So many of those facts are stark, particularly drawing attention to what Councillor Tranter's already referred to, but I'm going to read this out. A trend of increasing homelessness from private rented accommodation. This is the top reason for loss of last settled home and accounts for 57% of people. That is nearly twice the national average. So we have a particular problem in Torbay with private arrangements coming to an end, reflecting, of course, on the high level of private rented accommodation making up the accommodation mix. Then, as lead member for Children's Services, so very sorry to see there are an average of 293 children each year in temporary accommodation, staying for approximately 22 weeks, 72% of whom are primary school and 28% are secondary school age. We move on. A history of mental health problems was the support need for 47% of those owed a duty, and there are approximately 30 rough sleepers in Torbay at any one time. So we've got to do better. We've got to sort those issues. What is encouraging, again from the perspective of being your lead member for Children's Services, is there is an emphasis here on young people and youth homelessness, all that we are doing here. So there's a proposal to put in place joint working arrangements with Children's Services to ensure that families entering temporary accommodation are supported by early help colleagues, to establish a youth homelessness protocol and a prevention panel to ensure collaborative working to support care experience for young people who are at risk of homelessness. I'm very, very pleased to acknowledge that bed and breakfast usage has been eliminated for 16, 17-year-olds and significantly reduced for all young people. So we are making progress in those areas. And lastly, I do want to highlight here that we have the Single Homeless Accommodation Programme, the SHAP initiative, partnering with the YMCA to secure funding to deliver 36 units of supported accommodation for homeless, care experienced and young people 18 to 20, 25. That is something that is desperately needed. I know my colleague, Councillor Alan Tyreman, is working on that, and I'd be very, very pleased. It's something I know that the previous lead member and I share an ambition to increase the options, accommodation options for care experienced young people. So this is a start. This is a draft strategy, but I very much hope that what the thrust of it will be supported in consultation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more comments before I move outside? Councillor Chanter.
I'd just like to add that homelessness can happen through unfortunate financial circumstances, through relationship breakdowns, through no-fault evictions, and there's a lot of people that are embarrassed and scared to reach out, but the quicker that they reach out to services, including Torbay Council, the quicker we can help them with their situation. Don't wait until the bailiffs are at your door. Reach out to us as soon as possible and we can help.
Thank you. Very good message indeed. Okay, I'm going to move outside of the Cabinet. I've got Councillor Long and then I've got Councillor Cowell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I would like to start with a positive, and I'm pleased to hear from Councillor Tranter that the consultation will also include specifically trying to contact people in Devon Home Choice for this consultation, so that's a good move. And I'd also like to join in with Councillor Bai in highlighting the equality impacts for this report. Just to highlight 2 points, that the Torbay experience is above the England average for those who are homeless above the age of 45. And also that 32% of Torbay residents are living in an area amongst the 20% most deprived areas in England, which is why myself and my colleagues are constantly going on about the need for more social housing. And it is perhaps a supreme irony that this report is on the same agenda as the agenda item on Preston Down Road, where we are reducing the amount of affordable housing on that site. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cowell.
Thank you, Chair. And I welcome this draft strategy. I think it builds on the work that's been done over a number of years. And I know we have a really passionate and committed team from director level right the way through the staff organisation. And I think it's an appropriate time to pass our thanks to the staff who work tirelessly on the ground, either dealing with rough sleepers or indeed taking a proactive approach to intervention and prevention, which is far better than the higher social and personal costs in terms of mental health, self-esteem, if you do end up in a homeless situation, particularly street homeless. And I also welcome Councillor Tranter's commitment to that really positive engagement process, because it is important, because a lot of these people are the hard to reach people who wouldn't traditionally just go onto social media and say, oh look, there's a consultation. We have to be proactive in terms of reaching these people and hearing their story, making sure that they have their voice. So I welcome it, and I look forward to the final strategy, which I'm sure will be well informed by the sector and those individuals who are encouraged to respond. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Move back to inside the Cabinet. I've got Councillor Billings first.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate on lots of topics there's always a range of views. Just like Councillor Long, I did think it was appropriate that this was on the same agenda as earlier item 12, where we talked about the bringing forward of the development site at Preston Down Road, which will bring forward approximately, if I understand it, 30 new affordable homes, and a variation to a previous decision, which will ensure across Torbay as a whole we get a net increase in the provision of affordable housing. So I really do appreciate there's always a variety of views, but I think a net increase in the provision of affordable housing is an agenda where it's right to bring forward an agenda with a new draft homelessness and rough sleeping strategy. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Tranter.
Just quickly, with regards to the consultation, we know from a previous consultation there were some issues with not everybody goes on social media or can access things online very easily, and I just wanted to repeat that there will be paper copies in libraries as well, and there is people available to support you with filling those in if you need it as well.
Thank you very much indeed. And on that positive note, we shall move to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. We move on now to item number 13, and this is the Torbay Community Wellbeing Contract. Councillor Tranter, it's almost as if waiting for a bus, you don't get one, and then you get three Councillor Tranters back to back. Thank you, Councillor Tranter.
Thank you, Chair. My proposal for the procurement of a community helpline and community hub, which will incorporate a coordination and function and management of a small community fund. So the rationale for procuring the community wellbeing contract is that part of our Care Act responsibilities are to engage in strategies that promote quality of life for older people and their engagement with the community. The demand for adult social care continues to rise. in line with national picture and demographic trends. The existing helpline and service has been in place for over 5 years and has been successful in bringing voluntary groups together to the benefit of local people, offering signposting to help and support people from the community and voluntary sectors. The helpline and hub work in close partnership with statutory organisations to support strength-based practice and support appropriate screening and referrals between organisations as appropriate, including referrals into statutory bodies. We know that the current helpline has dealt with 978 calls in the last 12 months. Of these, 85% were managed by the voluntary sector and only 15% went on to needing statutory social care assessment. Other options have been considered and are within the report, but to ensure we maintain a strong offer in Torbay to support our integration and adult social care transformation, the paper recommends support for this option. So I recommend the Cabinet to grant the Director of Adult Social Care and Community Services, in consultation with the Director of Finance and the Cabinet Member for Adult and Community Services, the delegated authority to award contracts to the successful bidders of the Community Wellbeing Contract Procurement. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Tyerman.
Thank you. Yes, I'm happy to second this proposal.
Thank you very much indeed. Nice and short and sweet. Any comments within the Cabinet? Any comments outside of the Cabinet? Any questions? In which case we'll move to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. We now move on to item 14, which is the 0 to 19 Services Procurement. And again, Councillor Tranter.
Thank you, Chair. Torbay Council are responsible for commissioning a range of public health and children's social care services that support children and young people and families to grow and develop safely and healthily. These services are accessed through our family hubs and form part of the early help offer available to children and young aged 0 to 19 years, with the extension to age 25 for those with special educational needs. Some services are available to every child, such as the health visiting or targeted support depending on individual needs and circumstances. The current contract held by Torbay and South Devon NHS Foundation Trust with Action for Children and the Children's Society, our subcontracted providers, expired in March 24, and a further 1 year extension has been agreed with the contract holder until March 25. In keeping with procurement law, we have reviewed our commissioning model for these services and are asking Cabinet to approve a hybrid model that consists of 3 separate procurement processes. These are, firstly, to direct award to TSDFT, the 0 to 5 service, which is the health visitors and family hubs, alongside school nurses by following the Healthcare Service Provider Selection Programme, which is a UK government set of regulations for procuring healthcare services. Secondly, to bring young people's substance misuse and return home conversations provision in-house, so those delivering services are under direct control of the local authority. And thirdly, to procure advocacy and independent visitor services via an open market tender opportunity. The reasons for this approach are to set out in the paper and aim to maintain and build on the effectiveness of these services. This model also allows for greater connectivity and integration of certain provisions by bringing provisions in-house into the emerging youth offer to provide more joined-up services with greater resilience, improving the offer for vulnerable young people. The benefits to children and young people include a more integrated response through improved connectivity between services where children and young people are likely to already be known, including exploitation and youth justice service, supporting the tell it only once model. Ensure access to substance misuse information and treatment is readily available at preventative level by integrating substance misuse services into the wider youth hub model for Torbay. better and earlier identification as well as response to children and young people through improved interconnectivity between agencies including the Trust's Emergency Department and educational settings, responding to safeguarding associated with substance misuse through an early help model rather than multi-agency safeguarding hub. Robustly embedded the missing and return home conversation provision into exploitation services, where we know children who go missing are often being exploited in various forms. This affords the opportunity to identify and respond to the complexity of need for some of the most vulnerable children and young people in Torbay. So I ask Cabinet to approve the recommendations that ask for delegated authority to be given to the Director of Public Health and the Director for Children's Services to procure the elements of the services outlined. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I understand that Councillor Bye is seconding this one.
Thank you indeed, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much to my colleague Councillor Tranter for explaining it so very well. This is something that I did find quite difficult to grasp, and I want to say thank you to our Director of Public Health, also to the Director of Children's Services, Nancy Mee, and colleagues, who have kind of explained it to me in simple terms, because it's quite complex, a combination of a procurement issue, which is tied up very much in procurement processes, contract that is coming to the end of its time, so we have to review, but the key thing is doing what is best for children and young people, particularly the most vulnerable group who are likely to be there in the missing home service, as it were, or are going to become involved with the return home conversations, and those who may be at risk from drug and alcohol temptations. So thank you to colleagues for explaining, and I think it's also fair to say we have had an external challenge to the recommendation and to the policy that's being put for Cabinet. In a way, I want to say thank you for that, because that has also helped us clarify in our own minds that we are doing the right thing. So that challenge, I think, was very, very helpful. The key to me, I think, is on the two services that, as I understand it, and initially at any rate, will come in-house. And that is the young person's drug and alcohol service. I want to read again from the report on page 300, but we brought in-house and would sit in the youth service within the authority. Children and young people inform professionals. So we often get that question, you know, what do young people think? Hearing the voice of young people. So they are informing professionals that they want to attend one service. So bringing this provision into the wide youth offer, a youth hub, supports the tell it only once model of support. At the moment, I think we have a slightly fragmented delivery model. So bringing it in-house is the opportunity to integrate. It also supports the building and developing of a wider youth offer. There's a timely opportunity to consolidate this provision into that offer, and is expected to bring about improved connectivity, capacity and oversight of the provision. And then the other meaty one, the 1.12, moving on, the missing and return home conversation provision will be brought in-house and will be sat within the exploitation team. I think there's general recognition that we have absolutely improved our performance in terms of exploitation and understanding how that impacts upon young people in the Bay. And I think bringing it in-house allows the local authority to develop current children's exploitation provisions and bring into the wider context the wider youth offer, again, the youth hub, where children and young people can access multiple provision within one service. So it kind of reflects some of the recommendations that were in the JTI, the Joint Targeted Action Inspection earlier in the year, in trying to bring services together so that we have a better understanding of issues and challenges for our young people. So external challenge to this decision, that was helpful. A lot of time with professional colleagues explaining it to me and colleagues, and that has been very, very helpful. And ultimately, that's all about doing what is best for young people. And please, I think this is the way forward. to support the recommendation eloquently outlined by Councillor Tranter. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor By. And I think probably this is, it certainly is a meaty item on the agenda. Can I thank both Councillor Tranter and Councillor By for explaining it this evening? Maybe for those who haven't read the papers, watching us online, I think you've given us a really good flavour of exactly what it is we're trying to do here and talk about. So any comments around the Cabinet table? Any comments external from the Cabinet in the physical room or the virtual room? No? In which case that must be an endorsement of the proposer and seconder's explanations, in which case I will move to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. We are up to item 16. I am aware that we've been running for almost 2 hours, but we've only got a few more items left to go, and with your indulgence, I will continue on. So item 16 is the Budgeting Monitoring Outturn 23-24. Councillor Tyman.
Thank you, Chair. The Budget Monitoring Report was discussed a couple of days ago at Overview and Scrutiny, and it is now being discussed by ourselves with a view to us recommending its acceptance and certain proposals within it to Council for its meeting next week. It's pleasing that the Council has managed to follow the trend of recent years in declaring a surplus at the end of the year, a surplus that I think we broadly speaking have been predicting for some time, because although earlier monitoring reports were showing a shortfall, it tends to be the trend that things improve late in the year, as it is found that certain budgets haven't been spent, and that trend certainly came through. I think what is particularly welcome is that some of the areas of the Council that have been under pressure, and although are still under pressure, but are not out of control. Some of the overspends in, for example, children's services, temporary accommodation, have actually come in slightly less than had been predicted during the year. And that's great, because in many previous years, they've tended to get worse as the year's gone along. I think in particular in terms of children's services, although we have seen that trend, it may not be entirely a good thing, because some of the saving has come through from a lack of being able to take on staff, and not having staff actually does have some longer term impacts upon the effectiveness of the organisation. So some of it has helped our finances, but not necessarily helped the service, though I don't think at the same time we're receiving back reports of any major issues within the service that's being delivered. So that's all good. That brings us on to talking about what we do with the surplus, because we have to state where we're putting it, what we're using it for. And one thing that had been identified some months ago was the lack of any capital reserve for which we could use to do investigation work on projects which may end up being non-successful and aborted. And I think it's healthy that should be the process, and that if we look into something and find it isn't right to do it, there should be an easy way of saying, okay, we stop, we've learnt, we've investigated, and by setting up a capital reserve with £400,000 here, it is going to allow projects to go on through those early stages of investigation. If those projects continue, the money that's been earmarked to them will get recycled because effectively will be charged against the project. If projects are aborted, the costs will be picked up and charged for this reserve. So there may be a need in future years to top up this reserve. And I think that's the only thing I will say. But by doing that and handling through that, we're not going to be faced with significant write-offs, which would have been the case if this didn't exist. So I think it's a very professional way and constructive way to help manage our capital investment programme and allow it to move at greater pace without needing for every little bit of expenditure to have to come back for authorisation through Cabinet or Council. I think we've also recognised during the year that our attempts to boost the activity of Operation Brighter Bay, although they've been successful, have probably not gone far enough, and that we would like to see an acceleration of the improvements of the way in which the bay is presented. And I think it's important to recognise that that is not only because our residents wish to have a more pleasant environment where they live, but it's also quite important from making the place more attractive for visitors and hopefully to support what is a very important employment market's the wrong word, employment sector within Torbay. So we are going to put the balance of the reserve, 278,000, into a comprehensive spending review reserve for use and for draw out of to accelerate the operation accelerate the delivery of Operation Brighter Bay. In that context, that sum in the comprehensive spending review reserve is under the control of our financial director. He will make sure that any particular use of it meets the criteria of being good value for money and achieves our objectives. So that basically covers what's going on in the revenue account. In the capital, we are needing to recommend that Council adds to the capital project the most important project for Paignton and Preston, probably within the next year or two, and that's the Coastal Defence Project. This is a project that has been on the cards, being talked about for as long as I can remember, being in the council, and it's very gratifying to see that it's got to the stage it's got to. It's now got planning permission granted last month, and we now will be wishing to put into the capital investment programme a value of just over £17.5 million. The scheme will be fully funded by grant money and therefore does not require prudential borrowing, and that is why it's being handled through the monitoring report rather than a separate standalone report coming to Council. A draft business plan is contained within these papers, but this scheme requires a final business plan to be signed off as in the recommendation by the Divisional Director of Economy, Environment and Infrastructure in consultation with the Section 151 officer and portfolio holder. I'm stumbling over my words, I'm sorry, for finance and housing to award the contract. In addition to that, we have two relatively small amounts of money that we wish to recommend to Council are approved to do further investigation work, feasibility work, for the Levelling Up Fund 3 projects at Brixham Market, Fish Market, and the Paignton Tech Park. They are for 75,000 and 85,000, and they are to enable the projects to move forward and to produce proper business plans that will come forward to ourselves to look at, hopefully in only 2 or 3 months' time, because there is pressure to get on with spending this money at pace. We don't want to lose it. Important, therefore, that we get that feasibility work underway rapidly. In fact, the groundwork for it is already taking place, but we need to allocate the budget to enable it to be completed in its entirety.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor. I'm happy to second this one. I think it demonstrates, if we break it down, the £400,000 that we spoke about for the capital investment programme demonstrates a prudent, careful management of where we are. You said that, this comes forward at the end of council's financial year. Well, not all councils are in that benefit, Councillor. Just to remind you, there are many councils suffering with Section 114, and it is that prudent and careful management that allows us not to be in that situation that other councils are. So that's really positive. And to pick up on the Operation Brighter Bay, we know that it is one of the number one issues that our residents continue to talk to us about. We know that we want to do more in that area. This gives us that opportunity. And the various bits of capital that we're introducing really does, we changed the capital profile look in last year. When we basically said, this is the capital that we look to spend in this year. It's not it's not all of the monies, but this is what we look to spend. And therefore, it is right that the Paignton and Preston monies are in there, and delighted that will potentially start in the autumn of this year. As you mentioned, the part of this does need to, in fact, the whole of this recommendation does go to Council for approval, hopefully, in Council next week. So just before I move outside of the Cabinet, any further comments within the Cabinet? Let's move outside. Councillor Long.
Thank you very much. And of course, good financial handling was one of the reasons why the council won the Most Improved Council of the Year award at the end of the last Liberal Democrat and Independent administration. Unfortunately, I couldn't make the Overview and Scrutiny meeting last night because there wasn't a virtual option. But if I had been there, Malcolm Coe would have expected me to ask this question, which is on the collection rate of council tax. What was the collection rate amongst those on council tax support? And I'm sure he's briefed Councillor Tymon on what the answer is. Thank you.
And we're just about to find out whether he did brief him. And if he didn't, we'll get you the answer now anyway, hopefully.
Well, the answer is I didn't brief Councillor Tymon, and I haven't got that information to hand, Chair, I'm afraid. But I can confirm that the collection rate at the end of 23-24 was over 96% of overall council tax collection rate, which is highest it's been since before the pandemic. I can also say that we've been looking at the collection rate in terms of the new council tax support scheme which we brought in, and the collection rate does seem quite positive at the moment. But I'm not going to pluck a figure. I will take that offline and get back to you.
Thank you very much indeed. Are there any further questions? In which case, any further comments? In which case, happy to move to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. We have two further items. Item 17, which is the review of council procurement policies and food and music festival, following the report of the Overview and Scrutiny Board. Councillor Tymon, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. And I won't take a full 5 minutes. The origins of this of course, date back to a food and music festival that took place quite a long time ago, in fact, prior to this administration. However, the report we have now, I think, has little relationship to the specific events, because it is all about what is changing within procurement going forward, and therefore meeting some recommendations that have been put forward by Overview and Scrutiny. I think anyone will note here, if they look at the Cabinet's response to those recommendations, that they haven't been written by me. They're quite technical in nature, and have been put together by our procurement team, explaining how these particular aspects will be conducted in the future in a way that resolves the problems that we've seen in the past. And I think that what I would like to say is that there are two other aspects that lie over the top of this, which are not within the immediate response, and that is monitoring that what's in these responses is actually actioned on an ongoing basis is largely the responsibility of the Director of Financial Services, under whom the Head of Procurement, or to whom the Head of Procurement reports, and additional monitoring will be applied by myself through my regular meetings with him and with the Head of Procurement. So that's on top of it, of this, but the specific details of how we will meet the recommendations that were put forward by Overview and Scrutiny are contained within the report in front of you.
Thank you very much indeed. And I understand that Councillor Thomas, Mrs J, will second.
Thank you, Chairman. Yep, this review of the procurement policies for the Food and Music Festival excuse me, has been discussed on a number of levels, so I feel it has been covered really well. I've really no more to add to this, so I'm happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any comments within the Cabinet table? Let's move outside of the Cabinet table. Councillor Long.
Just a brief thing to say that I chaired the review that's before you this evening, and I'm more than happy with the response, etc. I just wanted to say that it's, I'm sorry that Councillor Lewis isn't there, because community wealth building features in this report, and it would have been nice if that community wealth building had featured more in the council's business plan, but I can take that discussion with him offline. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for your support for this particular item. In which case, I think we'll move straight to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you indeed. We move on to the final item of Cabinet this evening, which is item 18, internships. And again, this is the report from the Children and Young People's Overview and Scrutiny Sub-Board. Councillor Bye.
Thank you so much. And if I may say, Mr Chairman, I think it's been a very positive and constructive meeting, and we've sensibly considered some very important issues. And here we are, unbelievably, on page 383. I don't know if I've ever spoken to an item on page 383, but it does show we're earning our money to read through all this. And this is a response to a Children's and Young People's Overview and Scrutiny Sub-Board meeting that took place in April 2024, when they were considering the issue of internships, particularly trying to ensure that there are opportunities for young people with special educational needs and disabilities, and this was all a follow-on from the joint written statement of action. So there's a brief resume of what that meeting was all about, and then there is a recommendation that the Cabinet be requested to work with council directors to identify more opportunities for internships within Torbay Council and Swissco for our young people, including those with special educational needs and disabilities. And would you like me to read out the brief report that is here, because I think that explains it all rather succinctly, rather than me trying to praise these. So the head of SEND has met with HR, Human Resources, to consider how, as a council, we embed a shared responsibility to improving the life chances for our children with special educational needs and disabilities, and support the opportunities within the family firm to enable them to have the prospect of employment within the council. This is the meaty bit. Council directors and the chief executive have subsequently met to consider a report detailing the proposals. The paper was presented by the Director of Corporate Services and HR, who will lead on the implementation in consultation with the Section 151 officer, Head of Finance, to identify funding arrangements. Several actions are being taken forward to enable the council to support engaging with 5 cross-council apprenticeships, internships positions in the next year, with a further 5 to be progressed for the subsequent year. It was acknowledged that a level of support would be required to ensure that we do not just offer a work opportunity, but offer a model of support to maintain the employment. This will require financial support to deliver a support package. For every vacant post, and before we go to market, we should ask ourselves, can this be an internship or apprenticeship? And this needs to be specifically recorded in the council's establishment control process. I'm going to skip the next bit because it's just saying we must work with other bodies and other organisations. That's my interpretation of what has been written. But at the end, I think really exciting, furthermore, we will extend the opportunities to offer every care experience young person a work experience placement within the council, alongside an offer to support via mentoring and peer support opportunities. I think that's a really, really strong response to the recommendation from the Overview and Scrutiny Children's Sub-Board. So I thank them for their work. I thank my Children's Services team for that response. I think that is a very, very strong response, which I hope colleagues will support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bye. I have nothing further to add. Just happy to second this. Any comments inside or outside of the Cabinet? In which case we shall move to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. That brings the meeting to a conclusion, 1946. Thank you very much indeed. Good evening.